Hello, everyone. I'm so glad and excited today to have here on the podcast, Lucy. Lucy, I found your YouTube a year ago and I found it so refreshing and I learned a lot. And it was so happy that for once I found something online that's coming from a place of love and it's advice that you can actually keep, that you can maintain, that you can do. And for me, it's the recipe for success. Because if you can do it, you're just going to succeed. But I just wanted to know from your point of view, can we know a bit more about yourself, your journey, etc.?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for what you just said and for having me. It's a great experience. So for me, I am a nutritionist. So I'm French and I live in Paris, but I have lived in the USA and I like to do videos in English to give the French perspective to my mostly American viewers. And I like to focus on the positive relationship with food and health aspect of nutrition. So I'm not into weight loss, diets, all of that. There's a lot other content for that, but for me, it's more focused on that. I want my viewers and my clients to find a happy balance with the way that they eat, to be able to both enjoy food for pleasure and also for health. So I think that both is definitely possible, and that's what I really strive to do. So I do that throughout my YouTube channel. I also have Instagram, TikTok, a website, and I do online consultations, and I have a course. So yeah, I'm
Oh,
trying to do.
that's really good. I think we need a lot of resources, and actually, at the end of the video, let's remind everyone of how they can find you, and make sure to link it in the show notes.
Thank you.
For listeners out there, is what I want to focus on, and what you just said, how to have a healthy relationship with food, and I think I would like to focus this episode, if you want, or this discussion on that.
Sure.
I know in your videos you always talk about the intuitive eating, which I
Mhm.
love. And at the same time, there's also sometimes where we need to make conscious decisions of, okay, I'm going to take the food that has the most vitamins or things like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
From a point of view, for people out there who, at the same time, they're like sick of restrictions, what can they do? And actually, I wanted to just say something about me, 36 years old and 21 diets. So if you do the
Wow.
math, yeah. And I'm sure I did more than 21 diets, like the
Wow.
ones that I
You
remember.
tried them all.
Yeah, yeah, I tried them all and none worked.
Oh, wow. I'm
Uh,
so surprised.
yeah, it's
Shocked.
also great. So it's like at some point I'm like, I want to stop, all the restrictions, all the diets.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I want to make healthy decisions.
Of course.
What advice would you give to listeners out there?
Of course. And that's definitely a big struggle because intuitive eating is gaining popularity, and I'm all for intuitive eating. But also, I still think that it's possible to try to find balance in the foods that you eat, as long as it's not like your goal is to count calories and lose weight and all of that. You can definitely incorporate it into healthy eating. That's at least my perspective, because yes, intuitive eating is about letting go of food rules and letting go of your restrictions around food, but also there is a principle that is gentle nutrition, and that means kind of taking it to eating food that is both healthy and nourishing for your body, but also that you have pleasure in eating. And that's an important aspect of intuitive eating. And that's really the one that I like to focus on. And I
Yeah,
also like to focus on more mindful eating, because I feel that that can really encompass both the health aspect and the conscious, like you're saying, getting the vitamins, all of that, but also taking care of your body and then listening to your hunger cues. And I feel that that's something that can really be achieved with that. And then what I like to use, I have a little trick that I like to use. I like to use a Venn diagram. So it's I don't know how to
oh
explain it,
yeah,
but it's basically two circles, and there's a part where the circles intersect. And then I'd say that on one circle you have to write all the foods that you like, that you enjoy, foods that you don't mind eating, that you actually have pleasure in eating. And then on another circle, write all the foods that are healthy, that bring you nutrients, and then you want to be eating 70% of the foods that you eat that are in the intersection. So foods that both you enjoy and are also healthy. And by healthy foods, I don't mean salad and steamed vegetables. Whole grains like pasta, rice, all these things, they're healthy foods. I'm talking about non-processed well, minimally processed,
Yeah.
whole foods, things like that. If you're making like a homemade burger with like a lentil patty, that can totally count as a health food. If you're making like oatmeal cookies, that as well. It's not just like steamed veggies. I really want to make that clear. But basically the goal is then to eat from like this intersection of foods. And that way you have both like the health aspect and also the pleasure aspect. And then 20% of the time you can eat foods that don't really bring you like any health or like nutrition specifically, but they are good for your soul. I like to say like they're soul foods. They make you feel good. They enable you to listen to your cravings. And then 10% of the time you can also eat foods that are like really healthy. You don't really like that much, but you know that they're going to give you certain nutrients, and it's okay to do that. So that's kind of the way that I like to do it in order to balance things out. And I think that, yeah, doing both is definitely possible, but you have to do it the right way and not focus on weight as like your
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. So I have a couple of questions because I think this is really interesting, and also it's a new. I mean, although people are more talking about intuitive eating, body positivity, and things, it's still a lot to learn.
yeah.
For you, if you want to simplify to specifically my listeners on the difference between intuitive eating and mindful eating, how would you, differentiate both?
So I would say that mindful eating is a part of intuitive eating, but you can definitely be a mindful eater and not necessarily be an intuitive eater, because I think that at the root of intuitive eating is this idea of letting go of food rules, letting go of food restrictions, and really not feeling guilty for what you're eating, and also just respecting your body and honoring your body, whichever like weight you're at, all of that. That's like really the principles of intuitive eating. And then for mindful eating, I would say there's not this whole thing that is around like your body and around like getting rid of food restrictions and food guilt, all of that. It's more about what you're doing like in the present moment as you're eating. So making conscious decisions. So taking the time to chew, to like eat slowly, not having like any distractions as you eat, and really listening to your hunger and fullness cues. So being like, okay, I'm hungry now and I'm going to eat. I'm not going to wait 3 hours because I have like a meeting or whatever. I'm going to eat now. And also I'm full now, so I'm going to stop eating. I'm not going to go over my
Yeah.
fullness. All of this is like mindful eating, but there's also principles of intuitive eating that address this. So I hope that's kind of clear. It's both are kind of.
Yeah, it's like bringing intentions in
Mhm.
here, like the now, what I'm eating now,
Yeah. Mhm.
how I'm eating, and what I'm thinking of, and things like that.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's important also for the concept. I focus a lot on emotional eating,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
maybe for your listeners out there, it's so we either eat because we're physiologically hungry, our body needs it, or it's an emotion that you're trying to cover, especially if you grew up in a family where food was so present from one side, the other side, emotions were like taboo.
Mhm.
You learn that you need to fill your emotions with food other than like really taking care of yourself.
Mhm.
Therefore, when you eat, it's really not intentional if it's emotional
Yeah.
eating. Um, and for me, this is, I think, was the beginning of my journey. And I noticed that you mentioned several times that weight loss is a like it should not be the primary goal.
Yeah.
I completely agree with, but I'm just wondering for people out there that I mean, either, of course, you can lose weight for so many reasons, but let's think of people who need to lose weight for health reasons.
Mhm.
How can they at the same time ban the diet mentality, not think of it, but still get some improvements for their health, let's say if they have kids and things, like for the family, like
Yeah.
what would be your suggestions?
No, I totally agree that I don't also want to be like an anti like weight loss nutritionist. I think that in certain instances weight loss can be beneficial, but I think I still stand by my point of view that it shouldn't be like your main goal, because if it is, it will never be sustainable. It's just too hard to do that. But I really believe that if you're able to focus on creating healthy eating habits without any restriction, and that you're also able to work on creating a healthy relationship with food and work on your emotional eating, and if you're able to work on all these things, then I believe that you're going to kind of settle at your set point weight, which is kind of the weight that your body is meant to be at without you having to make any particular effort to maintain it. So I think that if you're able to do all these things, then you're going to get within like your set point range. And for most people, at least people who are like overweight, that's going to be a little bit like it's going to cause them to lose weight. Probably they are currently above their set point weight. But again, in order for it to be sustainable, it has to come from a place of creating lasting, healthy eating habits, not like drastic diets, not any like calorie countings or like extreme calorie countings, any of that. There's definitely things that you can do, I think, in terms of learning about portion sizes, learning about your hunger and fullness level, like when to eat, when to stop, learning how to deal with cravings and like other ways, or like emotions and other ways than with food. There's definitely a lot to be done there, but ultimately, all of this leads to like having the healthy eating habits that will give you the weight that is kind of the optimal weight for you. And I believe that if you're doing all of this and you still you're not at your goal weight, it's maybe because your goal weight is not the one that you have like envisioned in your head. I get like, for instance, I get lots of clients who are like, oh, I want to have the weight that I was when I was like 20. I'm like, well, like you've had like 3 kids and like menopause, so that's not a great goal. Like it's not even like it's not a good idea. Just don't do that. But it's okay to want to lose a little bit of weight, but you shouldn't become like so obsessed over it, and it shouldn't be like your main focus, or else it's just not I mean, at least in my experience, it doesn't.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, because the thing is that if you really focus on weight, your day-to-day choices will come from a place of, it's not a place of self-love. It's not the best decision. So if you put weight loss as a byproduct, it will come.
Exactly.
And I agree that, there are some things that you need to know, but I think people, especially our listeners, yours and mine, I think they know a lot on nutrition, maybe more than and I always say from my personal experience, theoretically, I should know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done 21 diets. I also, and in terms of education, I studied pharmacy and I have a PhD in genetics. So in terms of knowledge,
so interesting.
I should know, but it's not knowledge. It's not my head that's a problem. It's like my emotions. It's all the restriction that you said, the diet mentality. And when you talk about people that have unrealistic goals, it's probably about society, and how we should look like, and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And first of all, like side note, it's so interesting that you have a degree in genetics. That's like my passion. I love that. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Yeah.
It is. And I get like really fascinated by studies that show that like the impact of genetics versus like environment in regards to food, and like epigenetics, all of that. As like a nutritionist, it's so interesting to me. Like they have studies comparing twins, where so they have like the same genetic makeup, but then they have different environments, and their weights are still like pretty similar. So that also shows that even if your environment is like important, you shouldn't like beat yourself up if you're like at a weight that isn't like, your like goal weight of wanting to be much lighter, because that's also in your genetics as well. But you can also do something about it. So it's like both. You have to have both aspects. I think it's really important.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why there's the BMI, the body mass index, is a wide range, because everyone's a bit different at the same, you don't need to be a specific weight.
Yeah.
And I think it's more about working on more the mental part, like self-love,
of course,
all those things. And I accept myself for so many reasons, other than my, how I look.
Of course.
And talking about, society and difference in like cultures and things, what I really like about your channel is that you are, you've been influenced by the French and the US cultures. And clearly you must have seen differences in terms of how people view weight, but also food, you know, a relationship with food. What can we learn from the French? You know, there's always this myth that French people, they do it, you know, so easily. So tell me more, give me the gossip, give me the tea or the thing I need to know.
I'll spill the tea. Well, first of all, like I'm the first one to make a video like how French women don't get fat, all of that. But of course, French people have their issues. It's not like it's super easy. I think that well, before getting into like the differences, the main similarity that they have is that both of them experience like fat shaming, like both countries. I think a lot of countries do. It's pretty worldwide. Lots of fat shaming, being like thinness is idealized, lots of diet culture. And so I think that what's really different is the way that both like countries, the United States and France, deal with that. I would say that for France, the way that they deal with it is they more so focus on like food education and like the health aspect. So from a really young age, they don't want like, since they don't want like their children to become like unhealthy or like overweight, they're gonna like instill like good food education in their kids. There's going to be a good healthy like balanced meals right from the start. There's no such thing as like eating like kid food and stuff like that. Kids just eat like the same balanced meals as their parents, and it's really focused on that and health. And we're like really, as French kids, like bombarded with messages like eat 5 fruit and vegetables and exercise and don't snack too much and don't do all of that. So I think that French people focus on this aspect, and whereas like American people, it's more like diet culture, and it's more like going on diets and counting calories, restricting. And I think that it's also because they have like less food education. And so when kids kind of learn about like their bodies, and they're like, oh, I feel that I'm overweight because like this diet culture is telling me I need to lose weight. It's kind of, they've already had like all their bad eating habits in place. And so what can they do? It's just easier for them to be like, oh, I'm just gonna drastically cut calories or go on fad diets. Like that's more appealing than to be like, oh, I have to rebuild my entire way of eating and start to learn like all these healthy habits. So I would say that that's like a difference. Like they address it kind of differently. And then also French people are like more mindful with their food and their way of eating. So like we talked about before, they do like all the like the mindful eating things, but also because they have the opportunity to do that, they tend to have like longer lunch breaks, and like family meals are very prioritized. All of that is very important. The grocery stores have like better fruit and vegetables. I mean, they're all, it's like everything is tailored so that they're able to do that also. But also I would say that maybe another main difference is that French people see healthy eating as something like kind of positive. It's like, oh, I get to do this in order to make my body feel good, in order to be healthy, in order to live longer, like to do all of these things. And it's like a positive thing, even if it's sometimes like annoying. They just see it as something that's pretty positive. Whereas American people, it's kind of like, oh no, I need to eat this super restrictive diet. It's horrible. This sucks. But I'm just going to binge on like whatever I want for the weekend so that I can forget this horrible week. And then on Monday, it's like back to clean eating. So the mentality around that is different as well. There's like so many differences. I could like talk for 2 hours.
Yeah, no, I completely resonate with you. It resonates. I've lived in Paris for years. You said that lunch break is like important. I know you had a video on that, on slow living with French people, even like coffee break.
Yeah.
Is like my theory is that I feel, again, it's a theory, it's not proven, is that because the French people, they can vent their emotions also more. It's like if you ask them how are you, they would say how they feel. Whereas, for example, I live in the UK now. In the UK, how are you? There's one answer: I'm not too bad. And even in songs, it's so emotional. It's all the emotions, you know. So that's my theory. That also, the more you have a place to throw your emotions, like a bin of emotions, the less you're gonna have to eat. So yeah, really interesting. So I guess what do you think we can learn from the French? So if we have to give listeners out there a couple of points let's say 1 to 3 things to copy from the French, what would you say?
So I totally agree. I totally agree with that, the emotion thing. I hadn't thought about it, but it's actually really interesting. You're right. French people, like compared to American people, they really vent a lot more and they're really honest and blunt. And I know sometimes that they can get hate for that because like, oh,
Yeah.
so rude. But I would say like they're not going to say, oh yeah, I'm fine when they're not. When you're like, oh, this sucks. I had this happen. Like, and you're right. Maybe that does translate into like better like coping with like food because they're not emotionally eating because they're already outing their emotions like in other ways. So definitely that's an interesting take. And so I would say what we can learn from the French, first of all, talk about your emotions.
Yeah.
Like it's okay to have them. Also, like this is all linked to the long family dinners and all of that. But French people, they really like to spend time just like relaxing and like doing nothing. And basically that just means like chatting, like talking. They just meet up for coffee and or drinks after work and they talk for like 3 hours. They have like endless lunch breaks, endless like dinners with their families. They just talk. They talk about their days, they talk about their emotions. And for me, I know it's like always my safe space. Like when I was younger, I would come home and I would be like, oh, I'm gonna be able, like my day went not that well, but I'm gonna be able to talk about it with my family around dinner. And from my experience in the United States, again, not all people, because people get mad when I generalize, but it's like not everyone, but most people, they're
It's
just
like the 70% that you mentioned. You're
yeah,
going back to that.
exactly. It's always like there's always exception, but mostly they're just gonna all just grab their food like whenever they want, and there's not gonna be this moment where they all kind of sit together and talk about their emotions. So that's really important to do. And then more generally, I think it's also really important to learn to like take time to rest and like regenerate and just stop with like the hustle like grind culture. Like I don't know how it is in the UK, but definitely in the US it's like you have to be productive all the time, you have to be doing all this stuff, you have to have like 3 part-time jobs, and like it's just
Yeah, it's the same.
overwhelming.
It's
Is
the same in the UK. And just to add on, we're not generalizing.
Mhm.
It's coming from a place, of course, of non-judgment, of a place of it's hard for everyone. Women, I feel even more,
Yeah,
mothers even
definitely.
more, to say, you know what, I deserve to be happy. I deserve to take some time for myself,
Mhm.
vent my emotions to someone else. I'm not bothering someone else, but telling them what I'm feeling. Um, so yes, this is I have a Middle Eastern background, and emotions in the Middle East, they're not, you know they're not too shared a lot. So I feel really it's not about just listing the differences. It's about learning from others.
Of
It's,
course.
yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. It's good to mention that. It's from a place of
Yeah.
non-judgment, just
Yeah.
share,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course. No,
Because personally, I grew up in a family where I couldn't talk about my emotion. Like there was no place for my emotions. So I know what people feel. Um, and I learned a lot. And you said something that I really resonated as well in terms of another learning, is that you said the French people, they they don't eat, let's say, for healthier living, for positive reasons. And I've noticed also, I had this idea in my mind all my life that people that are thin, they don't feel the need to eat. But actually I've realized that, like, thin and not thin people, they all like to eat. But thin people say, okay, I'm gonna get like stomach pain, or I'll get tired, so they have other reasons not to eat, which is something new. So tell me more about this.
oh yeah, no, that's very interesting. You're right. There's like this misconception. I think it's like, oh, thin people, they just never think about food. They never eat. They never like.
Yeah.
No, I just think that like if we're talking again like generalizing to most like French people who are thin, like there's obviously like overweight French people. It's but most French people, it's because we kind of see food as like it's definitely a source of pleasure and definitely something we think about, of course, but it's also a way that we like to fuel our bodies, and we're more focused on like the quality over the quantity. So when French people say that they love eating, it's more that they love to have like high quality foods with like good wine and be with their friends and like enjoy the moment and like taste like different specialties of like different regions. That's more what comes to mind for them when they think about like the pleasures of eating. It's not like eating like super sugary or fat or processed like all of that food and having like tons of it. it's more about that. And so it's easier for them also to be like, okay, so I'm enjoying this food, but also I'm gonna stop eating because I know that like this is the main course and it's nice, but I also want to try that cake and I want to enjoy it and I want to still have room for that. Or like I don't want to have like a stomach ache later. I don't want to feel bad. It's more about the way that their bodies are feeling. And it's not like, oh, I don't want to do that because I'm gonna gain weight or that's like really bad to do. And but it's also it just comes from a difference in perspective as well. So
Yeah. I guess for me, it goes back to your mindful eating. It's
yeah.
the way they do it, it's with intentions. And for me, it's opening my eyes that it's not effortless either. We
Oh,
always have this, there is an effort as much as, you know, people that are on strict diets, but the effort is put somewhere else, maybe. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, so many misconceptions on,
Yeah.
you know, how easy it should be. It should be maybe self-fulfilling.
Hmm.
It should make you feel good, but it doesn't mean that on a day-to-day it's easy. You need to prepare in advance and things like think
Hmm.
and all
Yeah.
of those things.
Oh, no,
Oh,
you're totally right. Sorry. Did you want
no,
no, you're totally right. That's absolutely true. It's really interesting the way that you said it. And I like to say like we think of intuitive eating as something intuitive because it's in the name, but it's not. Like we used to be intuitive eaters when we were like babies and toddlers and like small children, but then like diet culture and like everything just kind of happened in our families and out like peer pressure and like your own like diets and all of that. And so now we're not intuitive eaters anymore and we have to learn to do that. And it's totally a process. And you're totally right. It isn't easy. And I think that lots of people, they just expect it to be easy. And you're right. It's like the same amount of energy that we would put in a diet, except that this lasts forever and it's actually healthy for you to do that. Because you're creating lasting habits that are actually gonna be like tools to help you long term. It's not like a diet that's just gonna happen, then you're gonna just gain all the weight back. So that's a really, really interesting way to see that. You have to be prepared to it takes some effort. Like you won't just like snap your fingers and be done with
yeah,
it. Just because, and you also said this at one point, it was really interesting. You said, I should know, like I have all the theory, like I should know
yeah,
how to do it. But it's so hard. Like there's like such a big difference between knowing what to do in theory and actually applying it. And if it was like this easy, if you only needed the knowledge, then everybody would just have like perfect relationship with food and like
yeah.
great diets. So obviously it's not that. So there's lots of things to unpack, lots of restriction to let go of. And yeah, I think that was a really interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I think for myself, let's say I I I was always body like fat shamed. Although looking back at the pictures, like what, like I was like, what? Why did they want me to lose weight? You know, again going back to society that's so harsh, giving me food every time. That's what I'm assuming when I was younger, giving me food every time I would cry. And so, and with all those diets, I didn't know what to do. You come back from a very difficult, let's say, day at work where you've been triggered, everything went bad. Of course, you know I should eat a salad, but my brain wants to feel happy, wants to feel better, and I'm gonna eat probably things that will make my serotonin or dopamine, all the good things, you know. So it's like
Right.
this is why I feel it's always important to what I recommend to my listeners. When you know what physiological hunger is, because also 21 diets or like so many diets, you don't even know what hunger is. You know, it's like you shouldn't even be like just hunger is like something like funny. You know, you don't even know what it is. Get back to know what it feels like when it's not physiological hunger. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Am I sad? Am I upset? Stressed? Or maybe sometimes you just need to rest. You know, just five
Yeah,
minutes.
of course. Of course.
So um,
Yeah.
yeah. So I guess, as you said, it's something that takes effort. It takes more time than diet, but it's irreversible. You're
Mhm.
not gonna come.
Yeah.
It's not gonna come back. Sometimes it can seem a bit discouraging. So, what goal or small successes
Mhm.
can our listeners think of in their journey to say, okay, I'm on the right track?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's important to have these small goals, like you say, because since I like never use weight as a goal personally with my clients. I like to focus on other things. So for instance, I like to listen to the language. So I would like advise like the listeners, listen to the kind of language that you have around food. For instance, if you're thinking of foods like good or bad, if you're like, oh, that was bad, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have eaten that, I feel guilty for eating that. If you're having all of these bad like thoughts and negative emotions towards eating like treat foods or like normal foods, then for me, like if you're able to get better at that, so if you're able to have less and less of these words and be able to be kinder with yourself when you have like cookies or when you just like eat more than you wanted to, or if you have like drink with friends, if you're doing all these things and you're able to not have feelings of like guilt, shame, and not be like, oh, I was bad today, I think that's like a really positive thing. Another thing that I look for is like progress and like little goals to have would be to learn to like balance out your meals in a kind of natural way. So let's say that you go like, you know, that you're going to the restaurant for dinner. So it's like, okay, I went to the restaurant for dinner, and then let's say that the next day you eat like a lighter breakfast than usual because like you had a really heavy meal at the restaurant. And if your mindset is, okay, I had a really heavy meal, so I don't feel like really hungry this morning, I just feel like having something like light and fresh, just to give myself some energy, but without feeling like too full, I'm just gonna have a light breakfast. That for me is like a healthy mindset, and it shows that it shows like growth, and you're both listening to your hunger and fullness cues, but also acknowledging that like, okay, maybe I need to kind of balance this out. And where it would be like, it would be unhealthy if you're like, okay, I ate all of this, that's like really bad, I'm like a horrible person, now I'm just gonna skip breakfast and starve myself because I don't deserve food. So it's subtle.
I've been there, yeah.
Yeah, no, sadly lots of people have been there, but that's like, I look for these things, and it's like often like subtle, and there's like, it's a fine line between like balance in the name of like health and like healthy relationship with food like we're talking about, and just like saying something is balance and just like, oh, I'm just gonna not eat because I ate too much. That's not good. So it's being paying attention to these things. And then also, like a small goal that I would suggest is really learning to listen to your hunger and fullness cues, because like you mentioned, when you go on diets, you totally forget what hunger and fullness feels like, probably because you see hunger as like a good thing. It's like, oh, it's good, like it means I'm not eating, so I'm losing weight, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then maybe you see fullness as a bad thing. It's like, oh, I should never be full. You know, I can never be full, that's not good. So learning to be in tune with those cues again, and to listen to that over like, oh, I need to finish my plate, or this person says I need to eat this much. And I think that that's really important to do that as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you said that when you were describing someone, like you have a heavy meal and the second day naturally your body is asking something else. I think this will resonate a lot with people, and let me know what you think, with people that have been on diets all their life, and there's this sense of fear that if I stop dieting, I'm gonna do something crazy, and like I'll always want to eat more and more and more. And sometimes I feel this is the reason why people don't stop dieting, because they don't trust themselves.
Yeah.
It's bringing back I guess trust in our body. Our body can do so many wonderful things,
Yeah.
even if the mind doesn't control.
No, that's a very valid fear, because actually if you've been restricting for a very, very long time, then it's totally possible that if you kind of let go of that restriction and you go back to like allowing yourself to eat foods, then it's likely that you're going to go a little bit overboard and that you're just going to eat a lot. And there's like this analogy that I really like. I didn't invent it, like lots of people use it. It's like if you've been underwater for like a really long time, and like you've been holding your breath for like a super, super long time, and then when you finally get out of the water, you're gonna like take like huge breaths of air until you're able to get back to normal breathing. And it's the same thing for eating. Like if you've been restricting, under eating, then if you let yourself kind of let go of like those restrictions, then there's going to be a moment where you're going to overeat, because it's like, okay, like I really need to eat. And there's like really studies that have shown that. There's like a study, it was like the Minnesota starvation experiment, where they had men eat like really low amounts of calories to see what famine, like the effect of famine during the war, would have on them. And these men, like when they were able to eat again, they just ate like huge amounts of foods, and it took them like several years to actually get back to eating more normal quantity. So that's something that's very normal. So it's not something to be afraid of in that sense, but I can definitely understand that it can feel kind of like daunting. It's like, oh, I'm gonna be out of control. That's why the only way to gain back that control is to let go of the restriction. And the more you show your body that it's going to have access to food when it wants, like it's not going to be limited. Like if you don't finish that pizza today, you can have the leftovers tomorrow. Like it's fine. And then once your body starts trusting you with that, then it's going to be like, okay, you know what, I'm not going to go crazy here. I'm just going to crave, like I was saying, like something a little bit lighter now because I don't want it. But that's only if you don't have like this restrictive mindset. So
Yeah, so it's like it's coming from a place of abundance. There's always going to be food tomorrow. There's food compared to diets, and also still keeping in touch with our real hunger, physiological hunger, while letting go of all those restrictions.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's been really lovely. Yes, yeah, I think I learned a lot from you, and I'm sure everyone will. It's very nice to find people that can bring so much love and positivity, like good vibes in this world. I think we
Thank
need
you. That's
more
really
of that.
nice.
And if people want more good vibes, where can they find you?
So I have a YouTube channel that's like my main source of content called Educale by Lucy. So Educale is like a mix between educate and kale. So it's like Edukale. And then I also have like Instagram, TikTok, and then a blog. It's like Educale, where I post articles. And then on that blog, I also offer online consultations if people want to like talk about things one-on-one, like go through certain issues one-on-one. Video, like it's online and video consultations. And then I also have like an online course, how to build like healthy eating habits and let go of all of these restrictions. And that's on my website as well. There's like the information. But YouTube, I would say, like if you have to remember one, YouTube. That's where I do most
Okay,
of my.
I will make sure anyway to link it in the show notes.
Thank you.
And from my side, for your listeners, I have a podcast. It's Emotional Eating with Marilyn, Marilyn, and the website Marilyn Rafih, RAFIH.com. I don't have Instagram. I'm that weird one that doesn't have
That's what you
Instagram
told me.
because yeah, it makes me eat the most. Like when I go there, it doesn't bring positivity to my life. So this is why I decided not to be too much on social media. I love YouTube, so because I can pick and choose. So thank you very much. And to end up the conversation, in my podcast, we always end up with some wishes. I like to wish things for my listeners, and I would love it if you can do the wishes today.
Sure. Sure. May you let go of your restrictions regarding food so that you're able to enjoy eating and enjoy all the pleasures of food.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.